Welcome to another craft video from the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. I'm Cheryl and I'm in charge of the craft kits that we give out at the main library. And today's video is to accompany a craft kit we'll be giving out starting July 1st, 2023. But if you don't have time to get to the library or you're watching this later on the YouTube channel, don't worry. You can make this project with simple supplies you buy at any craft store. So what we'll be making today are these cute little lemon lime citrus coasters. These are made out of felt and they're great to take to those, picnics or use for any of your summer barbecues, anything like that. Now, we got this project from our friends over at the Bettendorf Public Library, and they have some great crafts on their YouTube channel, so go check them out too. So what you'll have in the kit, or what you'll need to buy if you don't have the kit, are pieces of felt, and this is just regular craft felt. We've got 2 yellow ones that are 4x4, 2 green ones that are 4x4, 4 white ones that are about 4x4, and then you've got 2 each of the green that are about 3x3. We also have some templates. If you don't have the templates, then these circles, this one is the large one is 3.5 inches. The medium one is just a little under 3 inches. And the small one is just about 2.25. And you can just cut that size of circles out of any cardstock. Then you'll have a little baggie that has a needle. This is a needle with a large eye that is still sharp. We've got it on this little card so that it doesn't poke through the bag. And be careful, these are sharp. But it has to have a large eye because you're going to have to thread a couple of embroidery floss things through it. And you've got 4 lengths of embroidery floss that are about 2.5 foot long. You don't want to work with ones that are too long because the longer they are, the more likely they are to mess up and knot. And you should have 2 yellow ones and 2 green ones. You will also need to provide a pencil or pen and a sharp pair of scissors. Now, you don't want to use old dull ones because dull ones do not cut felt very well, and you will be annoyed. So they need to be sharp. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to need to cut out your circles, and I have already done that. And the circles are marked with color, and white. So the large and the small are going to be cut out of the colored, and the medium one is going to be cut out of the white. So let's start. I'm going to start making a green one. And so I'm going to just place these on the right felt pieces, and I'm going to draw around them with my pencil or pen. And now I'm going to cut these out with the scissors. Now, if you're really, really good with this, you might be able to cut just inside the pencil or pen lines and not get any left. I'm not that good. I still have little pencil marks on mine, so guess what I do to hide those? The side with the pencil marks goes on the bottom. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the little wedges. And it's so simple to cut these. You just fold your small one in half and just cut right along that. And each of those halves gets folded in half. And you cut right along there. And for this one, you just kind of eyeball it and try and cut directly in half right up to the point. Alrighty, so now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to try and position my wedges so that they are just probably about 1/8 of an inch maybe in from the edge and spaced out evenly. And you may notice that when you get 4 of them, they're going to be, the edge here is going to be right in a line, or at least it should be. See, it should be in a straight line that way. Should be the right size. They should be able to be positioned just like that. Okay. Now I need to get my needle and threads. So now we're getting our thread, and you should have 4 pieces of embroidery floss, 2 green and 2 yellow each. So I'm going to separate out one of the pieces. Now each one of these pieces should have 6 individual tiny little threads in them. So each one of these we're going to sew with 2 out of the 6 threads. So we need to separate out these individual threads. Now we're going to need to separate out 2. Now you don't want to do them both at once, because if you try and separate out both at once, you're going to end up with a knot. So you're going to separate out one. Make sure your thread is straight when you do this. You don't want the part off here to be all curled in on itself. That's a good way to get knots. So I've got one separated out. I'm going to gently hold this, and I'm just going to gently, slowly pull this out. If you try and pull too fast, it'll knot. Are you sensing a theme here? Slow, straight, to avoid knots. Okay, I've got one piece out. Now I want to straighten this back out again. Never start with a curly piece of floss. Separate out one and gently pull again. Slowly. Okay, so I've got my 2 pieces. Now remember, straighten this back out again before you set it to the side. Okay, so I'm going to take the 2 pieces here, make sure they're straightened. I'm going to line up one end, and I'm going to make a knot. It doesn't have to be a big knot, just one knot will do. Make it a loop, thread it through, and pull it. You don't need to get it right up to the edge. You can have a little bit of a tail. That's fine. I'm going to straighten this out. And on the other end, I'm going to thread both of these little threads through the hole, the eye of the needle. Now, if these are uneven, you can trim them off a little bit, or if they're a little bit, if they've got some little fibers hanging off and you can't get them through, you can trim them off a little bit. And if you're having trouble, you can get your fingers wet a little bit, dip them in some water, and touch these together so that they'll stick as they're going through. Make sure they're both threaded through. Okay, now you're going to want to pull it so that that part you just threaded through is the short end and the knot is the long end. Now we're going to start to sew this on. Okay, so we've got the spacing worked out. So we're going to do one at a time. So I'm going to take all but one wedge off, and I'm holding my finger down on that wedge that I'm going to keep so that it doesn't move. And these don't shift very easily, but I like to hold onto it gently like that just to make sure it doesn't shift. And that's the side with the pencil marks. So actually, I'm going to do it on that side. Whoops. All right, now to get this started, I'm going to be taking a stitch right near the tip. Not very much at the tip, but just like in just a smidge from the edge. But I'm going to start from the back. And I can basically feel this a little bit. And I'm going to come up there. Now, I'm going to get this close to the thing so you can see. See where that's at coming through that tip? I'm going to pull gently, slowly. You don't want to pull this stuff fast because if it's curled up at the bottom, you may pull a knot into it. Remember, slow and straight. Okay. Now I'm not going to pull this all the way because this is a tiny knot, and felt, it's easy to pull the knots right through felt. We're going to have to anchor it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pull it most of the way, but not all. Now we're going to take a tiny little stitch just up from where we did before. We're going to pull it through. Now, on the back, the part with the knot, remember it's 2 threads. So we're going to pull the 2 threads apart to create a little opening. And we're going to put the needle right through that opening. Then we can gently, being sure to keep this together, gently and slowly pull it. And you see how that just pulls that knot up, and it anchors that and keeps that knot from being pulled all the way through. So now I'm going to go back up just maybe 1/8 of an inch, right close to the edge but not on the edge, and I'm going to go back down again about 1/8 of an inch or so. You don't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be teeny tiny little intricate stitches. That doesn't matter. So I'll show you actually one I've already done, and I'm going to bring it up close. You see those stitches? You see how they're not perfect? Some of them are a little jig-jaggy, some of them are different sizes. It doesn't matter. You didn't notice, did you, until I pointed it out? And nobody else will either. And if they do, it just kind of adds to the handmade, rustic feel of it. Now, one thing I do want to say is when you get close to one of the corners, make sure you take at least 1 stitch right in the corner, just like we did at the tip. It doesn't matter whether you come up or go down, just make sure that one of them goes right into the corner to hold that corner and keep the corners from lifting up. And I'm going to go all the way around. And make sure I get in the corner. See, this one, the spacing is going to work out to where I come up in the corner. Okay. Now I'm getting close to the tip, and I'm going to take one more stitch, and I'm going to end up right where I started, going down. Also, you may see how long that is now, and I've only got a couple of inches of usable. If that happens, if you get close to that, just hold that and kind of pull the needle a little bit till you get till the end moves up a few inches. And you'll do that periodically as you're sewing. Okay, so I've got one in here. Now I'm going to remember my spacing. If you need to remind yourself, you can actually put them all back on again to figure out your spacing again. But once you get used to it, you'll remember how much the spacing goes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight back up through that tip just like I did before. And I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did before. Trying to make sure it doesn't scooch as I'm stitching. Once you've got a few stitches in, you don't have to worry about it scooting as much, but when you first take the first stitch or two in the tip, you have to be careful not to let it get too close to the edge of the white. Now, sometimes you can do this or like this, but every few wedges, I do every once in a while like to put this back on so that I can redo my spacing and make sure that I am actually not getting things too close together or too far apart. See, those were a little close here. I like to do that just every couple of wedges, just to make sure I'm still on the right track. All right, and I'll keep doing that over and over again until it's time to change my thread. Okay, when I get close to the end of my thread, and I should have about 8 inches or so. Let me see how much I've got there. I'm going to knot, so I'm going to make sure I take one more stitch so that I get the thread onto the back. And now I'm going to have to tie a knot. Now, if I happen to be up close to here, I can just loop put my thread under a stitch if I happen to be close to a stitch. But if I'm not, what I'll want to do is just take a little stitch in the felt. Don't go all the way through, but take a little stitch right like that and make sure it's hidden by one of the other pieces. And then just take the thread that's up here by the tip and wrap it around 1, 2, 3 times. Then we're going to gently hold that and just pull the needle through while holding the knot so that it doesn't come out of place. And then I just tug it just a little bit. Don't pull it really tight, don't tug on it. You might pull up your stitches just a little bit while holding it with your nail. And then I'm going to trim it off. I'm going to leave about maybe 1/4 inch tail. You don't have to worry about the tail because the tail is going to be hidden by the big green piece. So now I'm going to get 2 more things of thread. Take them out one at a time, just like I did before, slowly. Now the second set of threads should be enough to have you finish this one coaster with that other piece as extra. So I'm going to do another knot. Straighten it out and thread it, and see my ends aren't quite the same length, so I can just trim off the ends just a tad because they're much easier to fit through the eye of the needle if they are the same length. Okay. So remember, that part's a short end, knot's the long end. Now I'm going to go through, and as you're going along, remember what I said about putting the side with the marks downward. I'm gonna just check my spacing again. Okay. And remember how I started coming up through here. Don't pull it. Whoops, I missed it. Okay. Don't pull it all the way. Go back down and go. We're going to anchor the knot by spreading these threads and going through those two threads. Then gently pull it there. Now I'm just going to continue on the same way I did before. Okay, I am back to where I started, and before I take my final stitch down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my larger green piece. Remember, the part with the pencil marks goes downward. I'm going to take this and I'm going to center it right in there. And now when I go down for my last stitch, I'm going to hold these and I'm going to go all the way through to anchor them together. Now, if you see on the back of this finished one, I have one small stitch right there. That is where I came out. And then I have a ring of small stitches and one knot. That's what's holding all the other layers together. Okay. So when you come back up, holding these all together, I'm going to take a stitch right next to where I took the first stitch. Now, not right on there in the hole, but right next to it, just beside where I came up. I'm going to go back through, but I'm not going to go all the way through. I am going to go through the green part, and I'm going to bring my needle up at an angle between the layers, and I'm going to come out right under this corner, right under that little wedge. And it might take me a couple of tries to get the right position, but there we go. See how the needle is going through the two layers and it's coming up right under that edge so that it looks like it's just sticking out of it. Now we're going to just pull that through, and you'll see on the back it makes a very almost imperceptible little teeny tiny stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to take two stitches underneath the edge of each wedge. So I'm going to go about a 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to go down at an angle so that I come out like that. And then I'm going to take another tiny little stitch right next to it, and I'm going to come up at an angle right about there. And then I'm going to go back down at an angle, I'm doing a kind of a zigzag in and out of the layers. So you see how those two stitches are hidden under the edge, and on the back all I've got, that's just a piece of thread, all I've got are little teeny tiny stitches that you can barely see, but it's holding the two layers together. So I'm going to do that each time. Tiny stitch on the back, little bit bigger one on the front, but held underneath the layers, the wedge edge. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, so this is going to be my last stitch. I'm back to where I started in my circle. So I'm going to bring it to the back here, and I'm going to do that same knotting thing I did before. I'm just going to take a little teeny tiny stitch about halfway through the felt. Hold it, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Pull it up gently. That knot was a little bigger than I intended. But now, because this is the back and we want to anchor this to make sure it doesn't come out, we're going to do the same thing like right beside where we did before. So we're going to take 2 little knots. Then it's going to be 1, 2, 3. Okay. And this one, we can cut off a little bit closer and we don't have to leave a tail. Now, I kind of got that a little crooked as I was stitching. I forgot to check my spacing to make sure it didn't shift. So you see I got a little bit more on that side than this side. I can always trim off just a touch of this to make it look a little bit better. So that's better, and I only trimmed off just a tiny little sliver piece. Okay, and your kit has enough to make all 4 of these coasters, 2 lemons and 2 limes, and you're all set for your next summer barbecue. Thanks for watching another craft video from the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. I'll see you next time. Bye.